Good evening, guys, and welcome out to Revolution. So we are going to look at Revelation 16:5 tonight, and we're going to focus on this. TurretinFan has put some information on his blog, and I went through that today, and I thought that I needed to answer some criticisms, and also some, I guess I'm defending Theodore Beza from the accusations of young Krans, and also I will be disagreeing with TurretinFan on some of the conclusions there, even though I think TurretinFan has done this from a good attitude. He's looked through this information. He doesn't think that the reading is genuine, where I certainly think it's genuine. I think there's so much evidence for this. Once you understand nomina sacra, once you understand the name of Jehovah, the three I ams, the etymology of the name of Jehovah, it's unmistakable that Revelation 16:5 has the name of Jehovah in it. It's expanded. It has the I am in it. The past, the present, and the future aspect of God. And so I think once you understand that, that helps you to see why this was this became a variant. Now, I would say it's not so much a variant, but it is a nomina sacra because it is a sacred name. I recently did an interview with Nehemiah Gordon. Now, Nehemiah Gordon is a very interesting guy. Now, he's not a Christian, but he is a very good linguist, and he oftentimes is online talking about the issues that involve Jehovah, Yahweh, what is the correct pronunciation of the name of God, etc. And so we got onto the topic of Revelation 16:5. Now, since I've done that video with Nehemiah, I actually haven't gone back and really looked at it. I've just been busy. I've been on to other things, but I decided to go back today and just have a bit of a look. And I'm just going to play one little section of the clip from that interaction. And so I'll make this large. Now, here is Nehemiah. He's just started to share his screen. Now, this is from Rabbi Yosef Bekor Shor on Exodus 3:14, and he's explaining what Aya Asher Aya, the I am that I am, what this means. And he's basically saying this is the past, the present, and the future. This is the etymology of Jehovah, basically. And so this is in the 12th century. So let's let Nehemiah explain this. So I'll get my volume levels good. There we go. Yes.
Oh, there it is. Okay. So it says, this is Rabbi Yosef Bekor Shor from the 12th century France, and he's commenting on Exodus 3:14. Now, you could disagree with Rabbi Yosef Bekor Shor, but I would love to see the traditional Jewish sources that show that it's Yahweh, that it's he that causes to be, that it's a verb that means he that causes to be. He says, Ehyeh shel ehyeh, that's I am that I am, or literally I will, not literally. You can translate it as I will be that which I will be. He says, and remember that's I am that I am in most English translations, is the explanation of the unique four-letter name written throughout the Torah, meaning Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh. For the Holy One, blessed be he, was without beginning, and he will be without end. This is the meaning of the name. Hoveh, he is, and Hayah, he was, and Yehyeh, he will be. So, you could say that this is wrong, but you can't say this is just some crazy theory that I came up with. This has been around for, this guy's from the 12th century, so I want to say that's 800 years ago.
So, this guy's from the 12th century. This is roughly about 800 years ago. Okay. And so let me just read this. This is very important. Aya Asher Aya, which is translated as I am that I am. is the explanation of the unique four-letter name. So this is exactly what I'm saying with Revelation 16:5. Aya Asha Aya is the explanation of the unique four-letter name. Okay. Written throughout the Torah for the Holy One, blessed be He. Notice the Holy One. It's very interesting, isn't it? That's the reading. That's the, I remember when I showed James White that in the bog standard Wikipedia article, if you looked up the name Jehovah, it said sometimes transliterated as the Holy One, because that they have many names. They have Adonai. Sometimes they'll have God without the O in the middle. It'll just be a dash and things like that. That the Jews do this type of thing, and so the Holy One. So this is 12th century. Okay, Aya Asher Aya is the explanation of unique four-letter name. So it is the explanation of Jehovah. Okay. Written throughout the Torah for the Holy One. Now that will resonate a bit later. Blessed be He. He was without beginning. So this is talking about the eternality of God. Okay. And He will be without end. So He has no beginning. He will be without end. He is eternal. This is the meaning of the name. So this is the meaning of the name, the Tetragrammaton. Hova, He is. Haya, He was. And Yeh, He will be. Okay. So let me just get Revelation 16:5 up for a second. Okay, so this is from my website. And let's just look at the 1900 pure Cambridge edition, King James, all that. Let's make it a little bit bigger. Now it says, Thou art righteous, O Lord, which art and wast and shalt be. Okay. Now, most of you know I've done an update, the 2016 edition, or sometimes in the print edition, the 2023. Now, because this is an updated form that Nehemiah Gordon is showing, it resonates a little bit more with my updated form. So that's the only reason I'm showing that, rather than art, wast, and shalt be. So you are righteous, O Lord, who is. Now notice the first one that Rabbi Yosef Bekor Shaw says is He is. Okay, so it's exactly what is in the Textus Receptus, is exactly what's in the King James, is exactly what's in my one. Who is. So Hova, who is. Look at the order of it. The is today, now, in existence. Who is. Then the past, and was. Notice He was is the second one. Haya. And then the third one, and will be. Yeah, He will be. So what we're seeing in Revelation 16:5 is the present and the past and the future. Okay. And so this matches up with the 12th century Hebrew writings of this rabbi. And in the explanation of the name of Jehovah. So pretty much everything that I've been saying for, since 2016, when I wrote my first article on Revelation 16:5, it's completely vindicated. Who is and was and will be. And so let's have a look at my website here. So here we have Theodore Beza's Greek text. So he has Dikaios, righteous, Kyrie, Lord. Righteous are you, Lord. Hoon, Kahoen, Kaho Esomenos. That is the one who is and who was and who will be, who shall be, the Esomenos. Okay. So the King James just basically has, "Thou art righteous, O Lord, which art and wast and shalt be." So it's saying the word Lord here, Kyrie, which in the Hebrew would be Jehovah. The Jehovah's Witnesses sometimes do that. They have the name Lord. They might put Jehovah there or something like that in their translation, obviously, because they are infatuated with the name of Jehovah. So clearly what we see here is the Aya Asher Aya, the I am that I am, is the explanation of the unique four-letter name. It's the explanation of Jehovah, okay? So let me just go down. This is my Revelation 16:5 article here. Now, I'll just try and grab this one here, okay? Now, thanks to Nehemiah, he did point out an error that I had here. So obviously the Hov there is not, these letters are backwards. So sometimes that happens with Hebrew. It happens all the time with the Arabic type font that we're using with Urdu when we're doing the Urdu Bible. And it's something I should have picked up, but I didn't. So that has the Holem letter here instead of just the Hov. So here we have the first I am. So this is Exodus chapter 3, verse 14. The first I am says, I am that I am. And then later on it says, I am hath sent me. So there's three I ams in verse 14, Exodus 3:14. The first one is he will be. Okay. The second one is he is. The third one is he was. So it's very, very interesting. He will be, he is, and he was. And so then when we look at what that equals, it says, and God said moreover to Moses, thus shalt thou say unto the children of Israel, the Lord God of your fathers, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob, hath sent me unto you. So that's the name. So these three I ams equal the name of Jehovah, the name of the Lord. So Jehovah is an archaic third person singular of the imperfective aspect of the verb to be. That is, he is, was, and will be. And that is the exact reading of Revelation 16:5. In that particular order. So the is, the was, and will be. So when we read these, so this is a phrase, who is and was and will be, that we would say is nominative because it is a name. Okay. So now I'm hoping to understand more and more about this. I guess, I've written a book on Revelation 16:5, so I guess I've sort of hit a ceiling with knowledge, but I know that I've been calling this, I guess, a noun phrase, but I know it's deeper than that. Who is and was and will be, understanding that this is the name of Jehovah, the past, the present, and the future. It is like the etymology of Jehovah. Okay, so in a sense where these are the building blocks of the name of Jehovah. Jehovah comes from hava. Hava means to be or to exist. Okay, so the one who exists, the past, the present, and the future. So what we see also is, I showed Nehemiah this. He was really fascinated in this, actually. The chiastic structure. Okay, so Revelation 1:4, we have ho'on, kaiho, en, kaiho, ekomenos. So ekomenos means is to come. So many times we'll read in the book of Revelation, the one who is and was and is to come. Okay. Now, the only time it appears as past, present, and future is in Revelation 4:8. Now, notice that's the middle verse that we've got here. So the triadic declaration appears 5 times in the Textus Receptus. In the critical text, it doesn't, because the Kaiho ekomenos in Revelation 11:17 is deleted, and Kaiho esomenos is changed to osios, holy. Okay, so it destroys the chiastic structure that's there in the true original text that I believe is the Textus Receptus. And so in English, we have which is, which was, which is to come. Okay, Revelation 1:4. The next one, which is, and which was, and which is to come, Revelation 1:8. Then the middle one has which was, which is the past first, and is to come. So it's past, the present, and the future. Then we have which art and wast and art to come, Revelation 11:17. Then we have which art wast and shall be, Revelation 16:5. So I've shown the tenses here, the present tense, the past tense, and the future tense. That is the order of all of them except for the one in the middle. So this is a classic chiastic structure. Okay, so it's a very interesting thing to look into. The past, the present, and the future is in the middle one, but all the rest of them have the present first, the past second, and the future third. And so that's interesting when we look at Joseph Becker Shaw's quotation, which has the present first, the past second, and the future third. So it's very interesting because this is in the 12th century. Okay, so that's an interesting thing to look at and an interesting thing to understand. Now, obviously, you can see that the first four of these have ekomenos, is to come. Okay, which is quite interesting because understanding that it's the second coming of Christ, when we have the name of Jehovah here in these triadic declarations, so we have the past, the present, the future in certain orders, present, past, and future in most of them. But we have ekomenos appearing in the first four, and the final one has esomenos. So we see that these four have the is to come reading, and the final one has the shalt be or will be reading. Okay, so this is easy to see in English. Is to come, Revelation 4:8, is to come, 11:17, art to come, and shalt be. Now, why is it like this? Now, my conclusion is because when you read the book of Revelation in a chronological sequence, the final triadic declaration is saying that this is pointing to the eternality of God, that he will continue on forever. So I just sort of show that. So that's taken about 20 minutes to show that. I think people who watch this they watch it understanding that I am is the explanation of the name of Jehovah. And notice he calls it the Holy One. The Holy One is what the Jews will say as a substitution for Jehovah. When they see Jehovah, many times they'll say the Holy One. Many times they'll say Hashem, which means the name. They'll substitute it with Adonai. They won't say the name Jehovah. And so that's just the way the Jews operate. Okay. So just go through some of these comments. Master Pastor is in the house. Brett is in the house. Good morning, Nick. Boulders Alliance in. Pastor Brett saying esomenos was, is, and shall be. Yes. So esomenos is the third part of that, the shall be. Or hoosios. Yes. So that is a substitution. So obviously when the scribes, when the Jewish scribes in particular, I believe it was Jewish scribes who did this, when they saw the most holy name, Jehovah, with its full expansion with the three I ams there in the book of Revelation, they put holy on this. Okay. Now, one thing that I've pointed out is in Revelation, in the first 4 triadic declarations, it has is to come. Okay, it's talking about the coming of Christ. But the last one is and shall be, which is the purest form, because this is exactly like I showed what the rabbi says. This is exactly what the etymology equals. The art to come is slightly different, but it's still talking about a future aspect. So I do mention this type of thing in my book, but I could explain what's in my book and I guess bore people to tears who have already gone through this a lot. But I might just jump around and show a few things. Now, yes, I've actually just found exactly what I wanted to say, which is good because I didn't want to have to open my PDF. Now, Victor P. Hamilton suggests some legitimate translations, okay, of Aya Asher Aya. So I am who I am. So notice he's got 9 here, okay. I am who I am. That's most Bibles will have that. The King James just has I am that I am. I am who I was. So notice I am who I am. So you got 2 presents. I am who I was, a present and a past. I am who I shall be, a present and a future. I was who I am, a past and a present. I was who I was, 2 pasts. I was who I shall be, a past and a future. I shall be who I am, a future and a present. I shall be who I was, a future and a past. I shall be who I shall be, a future and a future. Now we see this translation throughout many Bibles. So when we look at, say, the Coverdale Bible, it actually doesn't have I am that I am. It has I shall be who I shall be, which is quite interesting because people over the years have struggled. They've gone, well, this is a future aspect or this is a past aspect. I was who I was. But Victor B. Hamilton points out that all of these are legitimate, which is quite interesting. I am who I am is most Bibles have that because that is the safest in a sense where it's just pointing out the existing in this moment, which can incorporate past, present, and future. Because say like a verse in 2 John where it says they do not confess Jesus Christ is come in the flesh. Now that's what the King James says. Now the is come, it's the present, but it also incorporates something that happened in the past. God was manifest in the flesh, and he still is in the flesh, and he still will forever be with the flesh because he will forever have the nail-scarred hands. He is going to be in the flesh forever. So this is part of Orthodox doctrine, Orthodox with a small o, obviously. I'm not an Orthodox. This is part of just true doctrine. That Jesus, once he was manifest in the flesh, he is going to be in the flesh forever, which is amazing. But that verse in 2 John where it says, they do not confess Jesus Christ is come in the flesh. Now, you could have has come in the flesh, and it's, in a modern sense, it incorporates, something that's happened in the past and it's continuing on in the future. But it's like with this here, the I am who I am, talking about the present, that also is God is eternal. He has a past, he has a present, and he has a future. So that's why we see who was and is to come. It's a very interesting thing because it's to do with Christ, and to have that in the triadic declarations, to have that explaining the name of Jehovah, and to have the second coming of Christ involved with that is a very big thing. It's not a small thing. And I'm hoping Nehemiah studies through some of the things that I've said, because I think that leads people to go, well, in the book of Revelation, they're clearly making out that Jesus is Jehovah. It's very clear to me. So Pastor Brett says, Hozios shall be, yes, the Holy One. Hozios equals shall be, Hohosios equals the Holy One. Yes, so it doesn't equal shall be. It is we would call it a substitution. Now, I'm going to just quickly jump into my website here and just explain something, because I sort of have to lay a bit of groundwork for people who stumble onto this video and they're like, what's this guy talking about? You know, so if I go to Matthew 1:1, now, this is on my website, so I've got quite a lot of information material. Now, let's just go down to some Greek documents that I've copied in. Okay, so if we go through the Greek here, many times you'll see the printed editions will expand the name of Jesus. Okay, so here we have the Complutensian Polyglot. They have Vivlos Genesios Jesu Christu, Uio David, Uio Abraham. So you see it has Jesu Christu, and this is in printed editions. Aldine, Jesu Christu. Kephalos, Jesu Christu. Erasmus, Jesu Christu. Then when we get down to Stephanus, notice he's got them in the nomina sacra form, okay? So the first and last letter with a line above it. And that's in his second edition. But then by his 1550 Textus Receptus, he has it expanded, okay? So we understand that nomina sacra forms are condensed. They have the first and the last letter usually. Sometimes they might have two letters at the beginning and one last letter or something like that. But I'm just showing you an example of a nomina sacra. So usually most of the other editions of Beza, etc., all have Jesu Christu in its full form, okay? But let's look at the manuscripts. Okay, so that John Mill, that's just the Stephanus edition anyway, Scrivener. Let's look at the other Greek, okay? So we're looking at Papyri number 1. So this is the dating by most scholars say these are the dates. Now, I put most probably a forgery on Sinaiticus there. But we can see it's nomina sacra. So it has Vivlos, Genesius, Jesu, Christu, Will, David, and then it's missing, and then it says Abraham. Okay. Now, that's it has Jesu Christu in nomina sacra form in Vaticanus, in Sinaiticus, in Codex Washingtonianus, in Basilensis, and I won't mention all these, but in the next one, the next one, the next one, the next one, the next one. Notice they're all in nomina sacra form, aren't they? And so here we have Bengel's edition. So these are just other Greek editions. But right up until before the age of printing, they're all in nomina sacra form. Now, imagine if I came up with the conclusion that it didn't say Jesu Christu. It just had Io Ku. Now, that would be dishonest, wouldn't it? If I just said no, it just says Io Ku. You would say no, that is a contracted form of the name of Jesus, a contracted form of the word and the name Christ. And so you can't do that, you know. And so that's exactly my argument, because people go, well, all the manuscripts say Hosios. Okay. My understanding is when people saw the name of Jehovah expanded out in Revelation 16:5 with the past, the present, the past, and the future, which is the I ams, that scribes said, this is the holy name of God. Let's put Osios here because we want people to know that this is a nomina sacra. Now, what does nomina sacra mean? Nomina means it's a name. Sacra means it's sacred or holy. So here we have the most holy name in the whole Bible. Now, I understand, I've heard TurretinFan say, Jesus is the holy name, and that's true. But for people who are scribes, people who are very fastidious about these things, if you just look at the usage of the name of Jehovah in the Old Testament, Nehemiah Gordon's sort of became obsessed with the name of Jehovah for quite a long time, and I think it's good to be like that, to get to the bottom of things. And he's explained what the name of Jehovah means, and also how this was brought across into other languages. And so many times, sometimes it's transliterated, sometimes it's like people just bring across the exact form of Jehovah, just the four letters into their language. They don't even translate it sometimes. And so it's a very interesting thing to look into, is how they treated the name of Jehovah in the Old Testament. And so who is and was and will be is the holiest name, according to, when I say that, I'm not saying according to me, the name above all names is Jesus, okay? But we understand that Jesus means Jehovah is salvation. The name Jehovah is there in all the names in the Bible. We have even John, who wrote this, his name is Yohanan, has Jeho in it. So to recognize who is and was and will be, this is like basically saying, I am who I am. I am. It's like, imagine if we heard I am. We're like, oh, that's the holy name of God. The holy, Hosios, holy, name, nomina sacra means name holy, or holy names, because that's what nomina sacra was all about. When they saw the name of God or Lord or Jesus or Christ, they were contracted, put a line put above it, and that's nomina sacra. But how do you make this whole noun phrase, this huge thing, into a nomina sacra? Well, you just put holy on the end of it, tag holy on the end of it. And so it's obviously clear. Even if you had a verse that said Jesus Christ the same yesterday, today, and forever, if it read Jesus Christ the same yesterday, today, and holy, you're like, well, there's a predictable past tense there that seems to be missing. You would even look into it if there was just one. But we have 4 examples before this verse of the past, the present, and the future. Okay. And then this final one, you expect the past to be there, but it says holy. Why? Because this is when it has komenos is to come, it's not exactly shall be, is it? Or will be. It is to come. But when it's exactly will be, it's exactly the 3 I ams, it's exactly the construction of the name of Jehovah. And so that's why they've put it on this verse. So hopefully that gives you my perspective. That's basically a summarization of what I've written a book about. And now we're going to get into TurretinFan's material. So I could show you lots more things, but I just thought I'd lay the groundwork. It's taken me 36 minutes to do that. And I've shown a bit of Nehemiah's material, but I just think this is remarkable. 12th century. Here we have the exact verse, Revelation, and he's saying this is an explanation of Jehovah. It's quite amazing. Okay, so hopefully you've understood that. Now let's just drop that video down. Now, TurretinFan has done a great job at putting all this information of Jan Krans together. So he had a New Testament textual criticism 8 hours ago, and TurretinFan contacted me personally. And actually, I'll just get rid of my family chat thing there. Okay, keeps popping up. Okay, so let's go to these 5 comments. So Francis Turretin said, I appreciate Dr. Jan Krans' comments on Theodore Beza's unwitting conjectural emendation of Revelation 16:5, as discussed in my recent post. Okay, so we're going to read his post, but I just thought I'd go through some of these comments. So Christopher Yetzer says that's a pretty far out conjecture. Krans's conjecture, that is, because Jan Krans makes up a bit of a story about Beezer and just sort of says, well, I can't really prove it, but that's probably what happened. I think it's a very lame story, and I don't think it's believable. Heffin Jones, who we've had on this channel, said, well, we do know Beezer sometimes forgot how many manuscripts he was dealing with by the simple fact that he's inconsistent with his own enumerations of manuscripts. So I guess for that to be proven, I would want examples of that. I understand Heffin might be going on Jan Krans's material in his book Beyond What Is Written. I have read that volume. There are certain things in that volume I don't trust. I think Krans has a huge bias against Erasmus and against Beezer. He's definitely anti-Textus Receptus. He's not sort of neutral or anything like that. I believe he has a barrow to push, even to the point where the Olam translation, in his understanding of Erasmus, basically saying that Erasmus didn't think that John wrote the book of Revelation. When you read Erica Rummel's translation of Olam there, it clearly says that the Greeks at one time didn't know who translated or who wrote the book of Revelation. It doesn't say Erasmus. And so, but he actually writes that there. And I think to just sort of become more anti-Erasmus. And I've seen this. There is just such a bias against Erasmus. It gets to the point where some of these things that are written about him are really ridiculous. But so I would just say to Heffin, Heffin can. I might even write this down here at some stage. But oops, sorry about that. So I've just got my sister is in Africa sending a whole bunch of pictures. She's just landed in Kenya. Beezer sometimes forgot the nature of the evidence he was handling. For example, he forgot the Complutensian Polyglot was a printed edition and would refer to it as a manuscript. Well, I think it is numbered as a document. So I don't think that he was that silly to go, well, I think the Complutensian is a manuscript. But the thing is, it is pointing to manuscripts underlying that. I'll just try and get my chat thing out of the way there. So this happened last time. The family chat hardly ever post anything, maybe one or two things a day. And now, as soon as I'm online, it just comes up like constantly, like ding, ding, ding. Just these posts. It's like, please, why right now? But anyway, they're having a great time over there. So while maybe unpalatable, it is certainly not implausible. Okay. So I guess this is basically just in a roundabout way saying Beezer is forgetful of how many manuscripts he's dealing with, and he doesn't understand the Complutensian Polyglot wasn't a manuscript. But at the end of the day, it was based upon manuscripts. And he knew these people in writing to them. He would have understood, having done his own edition, the workings of the Complutensian Polyglot. They wanted Erasmus to work with them. They offered him a job, and he said, I don't want to go to Spain. I think he just didn't want to get his head chopped off because the Spanish Inquisition were pretty gnarly, and no one expects the Spanish Inquisition to turn up on their door, and I don't think Erasmus wanted to get close to that. So Chris Yesses says not implausible equals conjecture. Historical analysis often involves conjectures, and let's not muddle our different types of conjectures. Okay. Heffin Jones says, thanks for making Krans's analysis available to us. The use of Beza's own copy is good evidence. Beza elsewhere muddles an edition for a manuscript. So I guess that's where I would ask for those issues to be pointed out. I would ask for those issues to be spelt out exactly where they appear in the document. I know that Revelation chapter 1 verse 4 was mentioned, that it has the reading of God in Stephanus. So we're going to deal with that when we go through TurretinFan's material. But I guess to say, he's muddling editions, it just depends, because that can be semantics. Yes, and I wouldn't put it past young Krans to just use certain words and to translate words in a certain way just to make people look like buffoons. That's what he does to Erasmus all the time. It's what he does to Beza. Sometimes he's translating what Beza said very faithfully, but thankfully we've got Erica Rummel's material that we can go through and we can check these things. And like I've pointed out with the Olam reading, he throws Erasmus under the bus and says he doesn't believe that it was written by John, when clearly that's not what Erica Rummel translates as. And so I think that's, I personally just go, what else is he not being honest about? Now, when I say being honest, he is doing this, and he lets people know that he does it with his refutation of Thomas Holland's understanding of the last 6 verses of Revelation. He talks about this and he spells that out, and so that's something that I think like he's putting it out there that he's done this. But to me, it's just not right to do that. Why would you do that? Why would you paint Erasmus in the worst possible light? Why wouldn't you just give him the benefit of the doubt there? Why wouldn't you not go with the earlier translation of Erica Rummel there? So anyway, then it says, minor note, I was under the impression that we can be certain Beza had a copy of Stephanus's 1550 and Henry Stephanus's collations for his father. You seem to be soft-pedaling those claims. Maybe I have misunderstood your claims or your presentation of them. Well, basically, what I'm going to show in this video tonight is that Jan Krans no longer thinks that. And so I'm going to point that out, that he doesn't think that Beza used the compilation of manuscripts by Henry Stephanus that is not in existence. And so we're going to look at that as well. So I'll shut that down so I don't get any more chats coming up. Okay, Facebook is down. Pastor Brett says, Hosios, the Holy One. Yes. Typos, and said, good job, Nick. Thank you. No worries, Pastor Brett. Hopefully that's cleared up that verse for you. So, yeah, when people say, well, there's no manuscript evidence whatsoever for the reading of Esomenos, when you understand it's nomina sacra, if I went through every one of Matthew 1 and said, it doesn't say Jesus Christ, it says Euku, you'd say, no, it's nomina sacriform. So just understanding that it's nomina sacriform, usually just to get people to understand the I am concept, the Jehovah concept, what nomina sacra is, usually I've dragged them to the point where if someone understands these things, they can clearly see it. Someone who doesn't, you're already trying to teach them. And it's sort of like you have to you hold their hand, guide them through the forest, point out everything, and then they're critiquing it straight away, which I sort of felt a little bit like with TurretinFan, because he was going through my book. There was lots that he was sort of learning, and I think finally he got it. You know, he was sort of like, that's what he's saying. And I guess with like stuff like Nehemiah Gordon's material, that's just solidifying what I've been saying for a long time. So the first place we're going to go to is Munster, Herman Munster. So this is the New Testament Conjectures page. And so Jan Krans is the main guy behind this. Now, we see here, Revelation 16:5, the NA28 has Hozios. Now, I might enlarge in this. Okay, it's nice and big for us. No, it ruins everything. I'll have to go back. There we go. That's big enough. And yeah, that's perfect. So Revelation 16:5, NA28 has Hozios, and that's fine. The manuscripts do say that, but understanding it's a nomina sacra, that changes everything. And understanding too that Theodore Beza he said he had an ancient manuscript with this reading in it. Now we're going to look at that as well tonight, because if you followed my channel for any amount of time, you know I've pointed that out. I've said, you know, Jan Krans is sort of saying it's not really a manuscript, or he tricked himself and thought he had a manuscript. And so there's been all these type of stories and anecdotes going around. And what I've found is someone in Munster makes up an anecdote, people will just repeat it. So if Jan Krans said, well, Theodore Beza went snow skiing and had a manuscript and put it in his pocket, and a bear chased him and, you know, ripped his neck and he was bleeding. It went all over the manuscript. And so he had to take it out of his pocket. And then, you know, he fell down a cliff and the manuscript was, you know, stabbed into a tree. And, you know, and that particular they would parrot that as well. That's how strange this is, because it's like, to me, it's like when I look at the Ruckmanites, they just parrot what Peter Ruckman would say, or Sam Gipp or Gail Riplinger. You know, they'll just say, you know, oh, there's a hidden built-in dictionary, blah blah blah, and the letters of the English alphabet all mean something. Like the S is a snake, so it's an evil thing, and you know, A means this and B means that, and you can, you know, the Kabbalah type thing. She's made the English language like the Kabbalah, and people just parrot it. And they just say it, and it's like, where'd you get that from? Well, you know, just from studying. No, I know exactly where you got it from. You got it from Gail Riplinger's second book. In this chapter, she says this, blah, blah, blah. And what we see with these anecdotes, these stories, many times they're just rubbish. Many of the stories about Erasmus, many of the stories about the King James, about the translator, they're just rubbish. And the more you look for facts to try and back up these stories, that you just realize that someone's just made it up somewhere. Bengal or Wettstein or Ruckman or Tregeggles or Franz Delitzsch or Westcott and Horde, or, you know, whoever's made this up, Metzger, and then it just gets parroted. And people just are happy with that. I'm not happy with that. I want truth. I want facts. I don't want lies. I'm not into deception. So he's saying that Ho'osomenos is a conjecture. Okay. What's interesting is he says that in his book, Beyond What Is Written in 2006 and edited by Bart Ehrman, but, you know, that's a different story. He said that he didn't put this in there because he believed that Theodore Beza had a manuscript, that he said that he had a manuscript for this. So he said he couldn't call it a conjecture. So what's changed between then and now? He's just simply made up a story that gets rid of this manuscript. That's just inconvenient. And so basically James White's been saying it's a conjectural emendation. When I wrote the book on it, I said it's not a conjectural emendation. It's part of a nomina sacra, but also I pointed out that it just depends who you are. Bart Ehrman and Bruce Metzger have a different definition of a conjectural emendation. If it has evidence in anything, like even Latin, even Coptic, even Ethiopic, or anything like that, then it's not a conjecture. And so it's not a conjectural emendation. And so they have a different understanding of a conjectural emendation, where James White is like, well, a conjectural emendation is if it's not in the Greek manuscripts. But then when you read Theodore Beza's own annotations, he clearly said he had an ancient manuscript. Now, if we just go back to the website, there is an interesting guy who talks about this manuscript. Now, he actually wrote a book. I'm pretty sure it was in 1611. Now, this is like 20 years later. Someone's basically just reprinting it, but it's the same, exactly the same as what is written there. And he has, where is it? Here. Let's read this one. It's a little bit big. I'll make it smaller. There we go. It says, O Lord, which art, so it's going to say which art and was and shall be. It says, sundry times before the true God, yea, Christ is thus described, save that instead of hoesomenos, hoekomenos is to come, which is to come, used before used in the other four places. Here it is, hoesomenos, who shalt be. Listen, as Beza hath brought to light out of an ancient manuscript. So scholarship in the time after Theodore Beza, they said, well, Theodore Beza said he had an ancient manuscript. And that's all I'm saying. That's all Jeff Riddle's saying. That's all Larry Brigden from the Trinitarian Bible Society is saying, who knows Latin. And these guys have both worked on translating Beza's annotation there at Revelation 16:5 and pointed out they clearly said he had an ancient manuscript. And this was the conclusion of people in the time who were contemporary with Beza, who wrote around that time. Beza died in 1605. This was written in 1611. And so here it says, see Beza's annotations on this place. So he's clearly pointing out Revelation 16:5. Beza said he had an ancient manuscript. Okay. And then look, it says, though it commonly be read hosios and holy, as cohering with the foregoing word dikaios, righteous. So that's what the Latin does, and that's what Theodore Beza says in his annotations, as if he should say, thou art righteous and holy, that is pure from all unrighteousness. And so, but he's clearly saying he had an ancient manuscript. So we're going to look at some of these things. So that's just one example of someone in the age of Beza, how they understood his annotations, clearly that he had an ancient manuscript. Okay. So when I say he had an ancient manuscript with the reading of Isomenos, people go, no, he didn't. No, you can't be proven. No. And it's like, well, that's what, like, Beza wrote that, and that's how it was interpreted in his generation. Okay. So we're going to look at some of these. So we see, I'll just get rid of, there we go. So the short reference, Beza's annotations, 1582. So we see Theodorus Beza, in his 1582 edition, he put, instead of hoosios, he put hoesomenos. Okay. Now, if we go to where am I? I'll shut that down. And I'll go to TurretinFan's page because he has a nice little pretty picture of it on there. It's not the clearest, but it's good enough for what we're doing here. So this appears in my book as well, where we have here hoosios, okay, and here in the Latin it has quies and quieris and sanctus, so many holy. He's written here hoesomenos in the margin. So this is the writing of Beza. He's underlined hoosios and he's put hoesomenos. So this text here is the Greek, Beza's Greek, Beza's Latin, and then the Vulgate. And he's got his own annotations underneath here. Now, this is his 1565 edition. And obviously he is doing changes. So he's doing proofreading work for his 1582 edition. So some estimate this is probably in 1581 where he did this. And he's written this in the margin. That's something that needs to be changed in my next edition. And sure enough, in his 1582, that's when the Ho'osomenos appears. Okay, so just to let you know that that's the first time, because Beza's already worked on all this work, and then he's gotten this ancient manuscript with that reading, and he's put it there. Okay, so we'll go back to TurretinFan stuff later, but I want to show you firstly some of what's being said here. So it is called accurately a substitution, because a nomina sacra reading would be classified as a substitution, especially when you have the present, the past, and the future, and it's only the future aspect that has the change of holy written on it. I would say that's definitely a substitution. Now, we can look at the citation here. So this is the Latin here of Beza in his 1582. Now, this is a translation by Jan Krans. Okay, so we will go through that because it is mentioned in TurretinFan's material. Okay, so that's the citation. Now, these are remarks from Jan Krans. So this is usually what I've read, and this is the usual type of thing that gets parroted, because Jan Krans is seen as a guru in the field. So it says, in Beza's hand copy, Ho'ozios is underlined and Ho'osomenos enters the margin. So that's the one that I just showed you. Though Beza's annotation states the reading is introduced ex votesto bona fide manuscripto codice from an old and reliable manuscript, so that's exactly what it says, there is no such Greek manuscript here. So, or Beza, what was he lying? Was he, so we're going to see what Jan Krans says, because he makes up a story here. And then we're going to see he actually starts to contradict himself a little bit, but we'll get through that. It says Beza probably made an error. Oh, he probably made, this is Bart Ehrman type of stuff. Well, I know he said that he had an ancient manuscript, but, in those days, there were lots of banana peels around Theodore Beza. And when he stood up from his desk, he slipped on banana peels and banged the back of his head. Blood came out of his nose, and that manuscript got blood all over it, and he went skiing, and a bear grabbed him, and, just whatever they want to make up, just to get rid of the pesky facts that get in the way of their nice little story. Beza probably made an error, listen to this, mistaking his own conjectured reading. So he conjectured it and said, well, I think that's the reading. And then he was like, hang on, I'm pretty sure I've seen a manuscript with that in it, an old ancient one. Oh, I'm not sure. Well, I'll write that down anyway. Yeah, that's what he's accusing Beza of. He's saying this is probably what happened. How does he know this? He's just making it up. And this is what you see with Jan Krans' material. He just makes stuff up. When does it get to the stage where you point out so many mistakes in beyond what is written that it gets to the point where people are just considered a bad scholar because they're not being honest with the data and the facts? Beza probably made an error, mistaking his own conjectured reading for an attested one. So he's like, well, I'm pretty sure that's a good reading. I'm getting a bit old. Oh, well, that'll do. I'm in a hurry, or whatever they're going to say about him. I was getting chased by a bear. The conjecture is adopted in the Greek text and in the Latin translation. Okay. There is no versional evidence for this conjecture. Well, there's a lot of manuscripts that have just gone walkabout. They've gone missing. They're no longer with us. The Ethiopic simply omits Ho'ozios, at least in most manuscripts, and only has two elements. And so he's talking about the Ethiopic here, which I clearly describe on. So I don't really want to go into the Ethiopic, but I guess I'll sort of have to because I'm mentioning it. And if we go Ethiopic version, Okay, so unfortunately, I've got a bit of a virus with my website and my computer, and so these pictures don't show no matter what happens. So, but I have written down the here is the one who was and isn't and is to come. It's written like this, with only 2 elements. So this is the thing. Young Krans is thinking, because it only has 2 words, it only has, you know, past and a present or something like that, where sometimes one word can encompass a present and a future, or a past and a future, and things like that. So what we see is these, in the Ethiopic, these 4 represent is to come, and then we see this letter is added in Revelation 16:5, so it is different. And when you go through and look at this, the Zahalo can be translated as I was, and so I would just say that here the final form has this and not this. So it is translated as shall be or will be in many Bibles. And so I've got an example there. You can follow that link through to an Ethiopic Bible. So I've done my homework on this, looked at it. I won't open that. It'll just chew up my bandwidth. But if you want to know more, just go to my website. I'll put that link in the chat. If anyone wants to study more on that, go for it. And okay, so it is in the Ethiopic, and so that's why he's bringing that issue up. Okay, now he says, oh, it's only got the 2 elements. You know, the Ethiopic omits the equivalent of ho'esomenos in Revelation 4:8 and 11:17, but it does not do so in Revelation 1:4 and 1:8. Wettstein mentions Codex Stephani. So he's finished with the Revelation material in the Ethiopic. So he starts to deal with Wettstein here. So Wettstein basically says that there was this Codex Stephani, which was a bunch of manuscripts that had been collated into a certain particular type of listing. And that's what a lot of people say that bees are used. But I'm going to show you that Young Krans no longer thinks that. So this might help TurretinFan, if TurretinFan watches through this, to help, because that's TurretinFan's main argument at the moment. And, you know, it's sort of like, I understand, like TurretinFan, you know, like it takes a bit of a learning curve to understand all this stuff, okay? And I understand he's learned a lot of this through looking at my material and then coming up with his own conclusions of it. But I did clearly say, I think I've made 30 videos about the videos that TurretinFan had made on my book. I did clearly say, I said, what TurretinFan is going to do, I'll almost guarantee it, is he is going to say this comes from the collation of Stephanus's manuscript that Henry Stephanus apparently had, and he's going to go that route. And that's pretty much, it was very predictable, because I've been through this like so many times with so many people, and you know, that was something me and Stephen Avery sort of were looking at for quite a long time. And so I think I've got that Wettstein material on my site here. I saw the picture was up before. Where are we? Here. Oh, no. That's not it. Anyway, I won't just sit there and just flick through things. That'll be boring for you guys. So it says Wettstein mentions Codex Stephani, but this merely reflects his incorrect inference from Beza's annotation. This inference is followed by others such as Hoshi. So we're going to look at him. For reference to Erasmus, see these other conjectures. So we may as well open them as well. So we see Elijah Hutter, Erasmus, and Bengal. So Hata has Esomenos there. The finding is only found in the Greek text. The Hebrew and the French have qui seres instead of qui esta venir, rather reflect Beza's conjecture. And so they're actually following Beza and not because Erasmus, he basically said in his annotations that it could read ho'on kaho, sorry, ho'on ho'en ho'ekomenos, which means it is to come. So translation by young Krans here is, although the translator changed the person, this is said in Greek with just as many syllables as used for the above, who is, who was, who will come. Okay, so I'd have to check that translation. I just don't trust young Krans is going to do the right thing. And so, yeah, we see Elia Hata and Bengal. He says Hata does that. Erasmus in his annotations. So that's all in my book as well. I talk about Elia Hata and how he has his Hebrew translation of because he has the dodecaglot that he done in 1599, and in his Hebrew translation there, he has it's clearly got the I ams there in that same verse. Pretty much exactly what that 12th century rabbi was saying that Nehemiah Gordon pointed out. So I will shut down that one. So that's the same one there. So we'll focus on the Ozios and Esomenos. Okay. So here we see Theodore Beza in 1582. That's the first time it entered into a. That's the first time it entered into a Greek printed text. Now it was in the Ethiopic. So the Ethiopic edition. Maybe I can bring that up. Ethiopic 1549 shalt be Revelation 16:5. That should get it. Okay, we'll go to an image. Now I'm only showing you these images because my website is a bit scratchy with some of the images. So the Ethiopic of 1549 has the past, the present, and future aspect in Ethiopic. Okay, so that has been brought to our attention through Hoskia. So Hoskia, he mentions that, and yeah, that's really all I wanted to say about that. The Ethiopic, just so you know that. That was the first time in print. Now, if we go to Beatus of Libana, Hamo Halberstadensis, they have the future reading where it would be equivalent to Esomenos, and that's an 8th century document, and the other one's 9th century. Now, they're both in Latin, but that is proof for the reading. And so, and understanding that it's nomina sacra, to me, every manuscript is basically pointing to that reading, just like Matthew 1:1, when it has Jesus as a nomina sacra, it's still pointing to the name Jesus. Here, obviously, it's a name. How can you get someone's name? The Honourable Prince or King now, Charles. If you have the Honourable King, and you've always said it that way, and then here it's like the Honourable King, and someone just wrote Royal on it, on top, and it's like, no, that should say Charles. If it's been like that all the way through, if that's the etymology, if that's the 3 I ams, if that's, you should be able to see that. I think sometimes there is a bias against seeing that. Beza's annotations, that's the first time. So we just went through all that because that's basically the same as the one up there. So we see Henricus Stephanus, so Stephanus' son, Henry. He became the main printer for Theodore Beza. Okay. So in his 1587 Greek, he is pro. So that means he is for the reading. And it says Stephanus simply adopts the reading. There is no annotation. Okay, so that's what happened. Then we have the King James Version with "and shalt be" reflects Beza's conjecture. There is no marginal reading. Okay, so they didn't even bother putting margins. It's like that's it. That's what it says, you know. And it has "art was and shalt be" in the King James there. Then we have Piscator, Johannes Piscator, in 1613. It says Piscator's note clearly depends on Beza's annotation, although the latter is not referred to. And here is his annotation in Latin. It's very similar to Theodore Beza's, but let's just check it out in the Latin anyway. So translated as, for Osios, it seems that Esomenos should be read altogether, that is, the future. If one considers the matter itself, a similar description of God above 1:4 and 8, 4:8 and 11:17, where Esomenos, we have Ekomenos. The probable reason for this is given as follows, that there the discourse is about God as a coming judge, but here he is about the execution of his judgments, and that for eternity. So it's a very interesting, you know, obviously it's Google Translate, it's not going to be 100%, but it gives you a bit of an idea of what Piscator was saying in 1613. And he just all the scholars of that era just adopted what was being said by Beza. See, this is exactly what, when I had a debate with Stephen Boyce on this issue, he said, it was only for about 30 years that the whole Esomenos thing was popular, and then it faded away, because he said in 1611 there was another edition of Beza and it didn't have the Esomenos reading. But when I looked into it, it was actually a reprint of the 1565, and of course before 1582 it didn't have the reading. So it wasn't a new text, and he made up this whole story that the printers and everyone all sort of got together, all the people who were around Beza, and said, we don't want Revelation 16:5 reading of Esomenos there. We want to change it back to Osios. And that's what they did in 1611. It's like, no, they're just printing an older edition. That's all. But it's just amazing how people must come from Bart Ehrman. It just comes from the academy. They just love these type of anecdotes and stories. But you can clearly tell here, it says 1582 to 1611 is 30 years. And you're looking at right down to 1689. It's still a pro reading. There's nothing in between. So for over 100 years, there's no contest. And even when there is a contest, later on, there's still pro guys. You know, so I'm pro. You know, I think it's just because people just made up stories and went, well, Erasmus is a clown and a liar, and you know, Beza is just, you know, probably gay or something, and King James is gay, and you know, they just make up all these stories, and then that hinders their ability to just see things, I guess, you know, because legendary scholars, I mean, Piscator, if you study the life of Piscator, he is like absolutely a legendary scholar. For him to just go, well, I'm just completely deceived by Beza, you know, Beza just tricked himself and I didn't realize it. Or Henry Stephanus, his dad did the Stephanus, you know, 1550 Stephanus. He continued on being the printer for Theodore Beza, and he did books on grammar. And I mean, these guys are very well learned. They know their stuff. They're not just going to make silly mistakes. And so, you know, this was an important reading, and Stephanus adopted that reading. So wouldn't you think he would have looked into it and gone, yeah, I think that's great. I think it's a good reading. Scholars in that era understood that. So 1618. So this is David Paris. I think that's the one that I was reading before that I said was 1611. So it looks like it's in 1618, but I could be wrong. Paris adopts Beza's reference to a manuscript, ut quidem Beza ex vetusto codice manuscript restituit. So yeah, actually, from what I remember, he did his 1618 in Latin, And then I think it was in 1643 there was an English edition of that, but it's clearly saying that that's from Beza, So, but half the time when we see it in English, we're like, there you go, But when you see it in Latin, it's sometimes people are like, oh, I don't know, what's that? Is it really saying that? Is Google Translate good, or is Jan Krans translating it properly? The Statenvertaling of 1637, the States Bible, the translation follows Beza's latter editions. There is a marginal note to Ende de Zilnsal, Andre Lesson, Ende de Helge. And so I should really translate that rather than just say it and just go, what was that? It says Dutch. The translation follows Beza's latter editions. There's a marginal note. Actually, we'll go to Dutch. And he who shall be, other lessons, and the Holy One. Okay, so it's just saying other lessons or other manuscripts, I guess. So that's the Statenvertaling. I said in my book that it didn't have a note, but I guess it depends on what your edition is. And so 1637, I think it came out with a bunch of notes. But anyway, I did look for the notes. So I thought that I had found one without notes, but I guess it just depends. There might have been a couple of different editions. I might have had a latter edition. Erasmus Schimicus. So he has, this is Jan Krans. He says Schimidius accepts Beza's reference to attestation. His printed Greek text is peculiar. Haon, kai hoen, kai ho esomenos, and then it has kai hosios. Then it says the translation has QS et Q eris et qui eris et sanctus. So he has the reading of Beza, but then he has holy afterwards. Okay. This text mentioned by Whetstone should be seen as a separate conjecture, but Schimidius clearly follows Beza. Okay. So he agrees with the reading. And so that's how, like, say, the Ethiopic or the reading of, who was it? Beatus of Libana or Homo Halberstadensis. Sometimes they have the past and the present, and then, the past and the future, and then holy. So they mightn't have a certain aspect of it, or they might have the three aspects, but then they have holy on the end as well, like this guy. So, okay, so that's what he has there. So this is his annotation. So let's throw that into the Google Translate. These words, kaiho esomenos, enclosed in these signs in the brackets, are not read in all the codes or codices, I guess, but were restored by Beza from an ancient manuscript of good faith. There we go again. And it seems, so this is the actual words of, I've forgotten his name now. What was it? Schimidius. And it seems that this restoration is necessary since John used to add a third homonos to all the other places where he circumscribes Jehovah's name periphrastically. There you go. It's to do with Jehovah's name. And that's the thing. Like, people look at me sideways, like when I'm talking about all this stuff, and it's like, well, just read the Reformation or post-Reformation material, and you see all this, Like I've never read this. This looks like a new edition, and that's why I'm going through this, because it seems like Jan Krans has done a study on it. He's added like 4 or 5 different ones, and he's writing notes, and so we're going to go through all that. It says here, to all the other places where he circumscribes Jehovah's name periphrastically. So he's basically saying he's sort of got Jehovah's name, but he goes he's not exactly saying Jehovah's name like shall be or will be. He's saying is to come. So it's periphrastically, it's going around it. The periphery or peri means around in Greek. There is no reason why it should have been omitted here. But the reason why it is not written here, ho ekomenos, was done 4 times above, namely in the Apocalypse 1:4, 1:8, 4:8, and 11:17. But esomenos, this seems to Beza because there Christ is spoken of as the coming judge. In this true vision, he is presented as already sitting on the tribunal and exercising judgment. So it's very similar to Beza's commentary, and that's quite interesting, his take on all that. So it's something I'll have to look into and probably put into my website as well. So thanks, Jan Krans, for, and at the end of the day, I'm thankful that Jan Krans has done all this material, but I just disagree with his conclusions on everything. So then we've got Johannes Marcius in Apocalypsen 1689. Okay, so he's pro, and it says Marcius prints the text with kaiho esomenos. He does not discuss the reading as a conjecture, but explicitly rejects hoosios or hoagios, which is sort of like a rare reading, but it is there in some of the manuscripts, which is just another way to say holy, which is quite interesting. He finds it difficult to decide between hoesomenos and hoekomenos, which he also does not discuss as a conjecture, but follows Beza. Okay, so he didn't think it was a conjecture. We haven't got his original writing there, so we can't see what he said for himself. But we can probably look that up later. I might be able to open it up somewhere else. No, that's just exactly the same page that we're on. Anyway, I won't try and rabbit trail. I'll try and go through these. Then we're going to read TurretinFan's material. So it says here, this is the first contra that we got on the list, so 1705. This is by Campidius Vitringa. So Vitringa has a contra argument. Vitringa marks that hoesomenos was introduced by Beza ex Vetusto bona fide manuscripto ut ipsi 8. He thinks all manuscripts consulted by Stephanus had kaiho osios, which is probably correct, but cannot be deduced from the absence of a variant reading in the margin of the 1550 edition, and prefers this reading. Okay. So that's interesting. So he remarked that hoesomenos was introduced by Beza. He thinks all manuscripts consulted by Stephanus had that reading of kaiho osios, the whole holy one, which is probably correct, but cannot be deduced from the absence of a variant reading in the margin of the 1550 edition. So Stephanus in his 1550 doesn't have a marginal note there talking about this issue. He has a marginal note talking about Lord, but not this issue. And so it says, and he prefers this reading. So he prefers the holy reading. Okay. So we can't see what he's written there, but we can go to these documents here. Oops. That's just the same one. We can go to his Evangelium Tetragrammaton Novo Testamento. So that's interesting. It's about the Tetragrammaton. I'm just going to look this up. I mean, that's the thing. Revelation 16:5 and the Tetragrammaton, they go hand in hand. It's okay. So the book isn't online yet. It's the only place where we can find it is in what we're looking at. Okay, so then we got, I won't mention their whole name. I'll just say Gustav Gustav is a contra. It says he rejects the reading, though he does not question Beza's reference to a manuscript. And then he's got this written here in Latin, which we'll quickly go through in Google Translate. It says, but in some codices, the participle esomenos, a clear sign of the future, is detected. Apocalypse 16:5. We will tarry a little, since there is no one who is ignorant, almost only Beza, of the difficulty here of the present participle of the ordinate form and of its MCSs always bringing something new. I'm not sure what that means there, but to the guidance, not always the best, we owe this lesson, nor to depart from the usual lesson or usual reading with its own authority to be able to bring about with simple, completely frivolous reasons. Anyway, that doesn't sound like it translated that well. So, but we'll just continue through. So then we got Wettstein. So Wettstein mentions this. He mentions it's Piscator and not Beza. And I've pointed that out on in my book and on my website. So then we've got Bengal for Henry Stephanus, for Perez, for Piscator, and for others. So he's just got this list there. Bengal has this written. So let's throw that into the translate. See if it translates better than the other one. Coho Osomenos, Beza from an ancient. He's, as he says, manuscript of good faith. Code, or maybe codex, and yet he seems to have given no conjecture. He doesn't give a conjecture, he gets it from a manuscript. For why do the annotations of Beza mention that codex or code in no other place in the Apocalypse? Or why does Robert Stephanus' margin, nothing changes at this point, so Stephanus doesn't have a margin in it. Beza, however, is followed by Henry Stephanus, Parius, Piscator, Amara, and more fully, parentheses are used, kai esomenos, kai ozios. Schmidy's text has but Macarius criticizes Beza, and more seriously Zettner in his dissertation on the Tetragrammaton. So that's interesting. So that's that book mentioned again. Okay, so that's a very interesting one. So yeah, these guys are bringing some interesting material. So then we have Wolf, Johann Christian Wolf. So it says, Wolf traces the reading to Beza and also discusses Beza's dubious reference to attestation. And then he's got written here all about it. So let's have a quick look in Translate. And the same word ozios, as if it had little to do with this, was seen by others to be interchanged with esomenos, so as to express homenos, which St. John used everywhere in this eulogy. Beza proceeded, as he says, from an ancient manuscript of good faith. Codice Erasmus Chamidius applauds him, but in such a way that with the retained reading kai ozios in the same context, but using the familiar parenthesis, he proceeds kai ho esomenos. It is stipulated from our writings of B. Severinus, and he's got a long name there and a bunch of stuff, and from the Reformed Vitringa, who we just read, I'm pretty sure, thinks that Beza gave some conjecture. Why, he continues, do Beza's annotations mention that code in no other place in the Apocalypse, or Robert Stephanus's margin doesn't have it? Why does it vary? But Beza is followed by Stephanus, so we sort of read through that. He is also alienated from that reading of Beza when he thinks that he can accomplish nothing either by his own authority or by reasonings which are plainly frivolous. In Beza, Marcius also observes in his commentary, he is certainly to be blamed who confidently substitutes the word homonos for the other word osios, and considers that this word cannot be doubted. However, no codex or old version yet be brought in where homonos is read from here, expressed from there. There is, of course, no good reason why we should turn away from the reading, which is supported by so many codex or so many manuscripts, I guess. So, yeah, that's interesting. Seems to be quoting a bunch of guys who came before him. Okay, so where are we up to? So that was that Wolf? Yes, I'm pretty sure that was Wolf. Yes. So then we have Adrian Klut. Klut mainly discusses the States translation. Okay, so he's got quite a bit written here. Let's have a quick look at what he's got to say. The Receptor Lectio has Dikaios Kyrie a Hoon Kaho en Kaho Osios. You are righteous, O Lord, who is and who was, and the Holy One, that you have judged this. But the Ned Overs, who is and who was and who will be, that you, marginal note, the other reading, and the Holy. So that's the Statenvertaling Dutch Bible has that marginal note. But this note is by no means sufficient for not only that other reading, the Holy One, but it is remarkable that there has never been a single manuscript exhibited in which this is our reading, I guess. Overview, which will be found hosomenos. And not only this, but even all editions from first to last have Osios Holy. It is only the one who in editions 3 to 5 has assumed the liberty of putting hosomenos here, as Wolf shows, but the Receptor Lectio still retains Osios in all of them. Most manuscripts in the meantime lead us there to read here simply Hoen Osios as H1:8, I guess Apocalypse 1:8, or Pantocrat, like Pantocrator, the Almighty. Okay. Interesting. How many have we got to go? So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 to go. And young Krans has got his own little one down the bottom, which is basically what TurretinFan has gotten. I'm pretty sure maybe TurretinFan got the book. This has the exact same stuff that young Krans, that TurretinFan has put into his website. But thankfully, TurretinFan has actually translated it from the German into English. He says, like he might have made a mistake here and there, but we get the gist, Okay, so that was Glut. Now we've got Valken. I won't say his name again. So it says he mentions the conjecture as proposed by Beza and Piscator and followed by the States Bible. So he mentions this. So we'll just quickly translate that. Google Translate's amazing. So he's got Osios reading to read Kaho Esomenos for Osios were suspected by Piscator and Beza. The true suspicion was seen by the Belgic interpreters, for they gave day is, then day was, then day zensal. So that's got the reading of the King James, Beza, Textus Receptus reading there. So he's not into that. Then we've got Mr. Close. Okay, he's a contra, and it says close reacts to the former guy's information. Okay, then we got Francis Hushi, and it says Hushi does not discuss the reading as a conjecture, but as actually attested. Listen to this. Following Beza's own words, he regards Beza's reference to a manuscript as proof of his own special and erroneous theory, according to which Robertus Stephanus had collations of twice as many manuscripts as actually mentioned in the marginal apparatus of the 1550 edition. Then it says, more generally, Hushi, followed Wettstein's. Listen to this. This is good for TurretinFan to understand. This is what Jan Krans thinks of the collations concept. More generally, Hushi follows Wettstein's mistaken idea that Beza derived the reading from Stephanus's collation book. So that's the commentary. That's the comments that Jan Krans has on this guy. So he's basically saying that Wettstein's idea that Beza got it from the collations is wrong. So that's one of the main arguments that TurretinFan's brought up. And I sort of said I can almost guarantee you that's the direction that TurretinFan's going to go, and he did. And so, so that's Hushi. It doesn't have the reading there, so we can't check it. But then we have Heringa in 1835. Heringa opposed the reading, but points out against some of the former guys, Beza's reference to a manuscript. And then we have his commentary. So let's put that into Google and we'll see what it says. Now, I'm just going to sort of skip through. If there's anything interesting in this, I'll read it, but it's quite a long one. Maybe I should just read it. Coher Somenos, and then it's got the reading of the Statenvertaling. Complutensian, Erasmus, and Stephanus had published what they all recognize as versions and codices of Greek, almost all Coher Osios, that the reading accepted by the Elzeverians, the Elzever uncle and nephew, is very suitable for this passage. Correct it, therefore, in 1 and 2 edition, and has been followed by Beza in 3, 4, and his 5th. So he introduced it in 1582, 1589 and 1598 editions. Substitutions or substitutes in its place the reading preferred by the fishermen and the Belgians. So I guess it's translated like fishermen there from piscator. Yeah, that means like the fishermen. And the Belgians, I guess that's in the Belgian translation. Maybe is that Dutch? I'm not sure. With this additional annotation, it is commonly read Coher Osios, showing that the article, apart from all manner of speaking, is a corrupted writing. But the Vulgate, whether it reads the article or not, renders it no more correctly Osios, holy, the particle K being badly extracted, absolutely necessary, so that Dikaios and Osios are connected. So this is sort of repeating what Beza had said. But when John, in all other places where he explains the name of Jehovah, as we said before, as we said above in chapter 1, verse 4, is wont to add a third, namely Coher Erkomenos, why this has passed. Therefore, I cannot be sure that the writing is authentic, but from an ancient hand of good faith, the codex was restored, namely Hoesomenos. So he's sort of just basically repeating what Beza said here. And then he says, these things of which no one today can be persuaded, nor was he persuaded by the roll who wrote in Greek, Coher Osios, the Belgian, and then he's got the Statenvertaling reading of the Textus Receptus, and the same genuine reading also in the old Belgian. The Belgians commemorated the version expressed in the notes, but it's understood from the Beza annotation that the other reading was adopted by our people on the authority of one codex and not, as that guy thought, a bare conjecture. So that's quite interesting, because that's exactly the argument that me, Jeff Riddle, Larry Brigden have been bringing out, that Beza had a manuscript, and so this guy's saying the exact same argument, that he's saying Beza based it on one manuscript, not on a bare conjecture. So he's saying people are mistakenly saying it's a conjecture. It's not. It's based on a manuscript. And this guy's a contra guy, but he's clearly saying that. So it goes to show you what Jeff Riddle said, what Larry Brigden from the Trinitarian Bible Society said, and what I've said has been correct. It's matching up with what these guys are saying. And these guys are contras. They're not even for the reading. So, okay, so that was that one there. So we've got 2 to go. Manon says, well, this is what Krans says about it. Referring to Wettstein attributes the conjecture to Piscator. Okay. And then we've got young Krans. So he has his own Dutch in German, actually, sorry. And he's written that down. But thankfully, this has been translated on TurretinFan's website. So I'll put this up and we're going to jump into TurretinFan's material. So let's go to the top and we'll read this through. I'll just check any comments. Boulder's Lion says, Nick makes my brain hurt in a good way. Pastor Brett says, while I have known this for many years, you are the first one I have seen put it together. Os is the nominus sacra that was used in Koine. Yeah, Os, that would be the reading, the Os reading. Yeah, I don't think that was a nominus sacra. That's what James White says in his book, or in the King James KJV Today website. It sort of makes out that perhaps the Os is a nominus sacra, where I don't see that. I see the whole thing as a nominus sacra. And so that's where I think sometimes with TurretinFan, he's sort of looking for some small little words like ho'on, kaho'en, kaho, somenos, or ozios, or like having like some of the letters like ho'on being the nominus sacra there, and saying, oh, that's a nominus sacra, but the rest of it isn't, and all this sort of stuff, where I see the whole thing as a nominus sacra. But then I'm not sure if you're talking about the Os reading in 1 Timothy 3:16, where it has the who reading, but it is in a nominus sacra form in the Textus Receptus, but not in the critical text. So maybe I've mixed that up there. Omicron Sigma. So the critical text people say that we are trusting Beza's in text annotation. So the critical text people are saying we're trusting Beza's in text annotation. That's grasping for straws. So basically, Beza said he had a manuscript, an ancient manuscript of good faith that has the reading that we have in the Textus Receptus and in the King James today. But people are just making up stories saying that he just sort of made this up, or he tricked himself. So it's not really his own fault. He's not deliberately the liar, even though I don't know how they know this. It's just they just want to give him the benefit of, I guess, because us TR people and King James people have made a fuss. They're like, look, let's not call him a liar. Let's just say that he just tricked himself. Joe Biden, by that age, he was Joe Biden, just walking around, sniffing people's hair, didn't know what he was doing from one day to the next, and just went, yeah, whatever, put whatever reading in. That's what they're trying to make out. So Pastor Brett got to run. Have a good evening, Nick, and all good day for the rest. Thanks, Pastor Brett, for joining us. And Christopher Yetzer is in the house. He says, just information, unfortunately not in favor of the reading. None of the Italian up to 1641 translates with Beza here. Neither Beza's student, Diodati, 1607 and 1641, nor the 1562 printed in Geneva. So the 1652, yeah, definitely wouldn't have it. But yeah, afterwards. And so, yeah, I guess it depends on what they were basing their text on. So, like, say, for example, Luther, he went with Erasmus's second edition. Had he gone with his third edition, the comma wouldn't have been an issue in his German translation. But so some people have just gone, well, I'm gonna go with a certain edition. That can be an issue. But yeah, it would be interesting to find out exactly which issue the Diodati went with. That would be an interesting thing to find out. So, Jan Krans on Beza's emendation. So, is it an emendation? Well, everything is an emendation in a sense of, you have emendations that are done through conjecture, or emendations that are done through manuscripts, but they're all called emendations. So when you have conjectural emendations, that's like, well, there's not evidence for it, but sometimes a conjectural emendation can be fine. You can have like, the classic example of Dan Wallace in the preamble to the Constitution of the United States. It might have, we the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect onion. Now, obviously, it's not about cooking. It's not about onions. It's about the union. So people instinctively know that that's a wrong reading. And so to conjecture there, even if it was written down, you would go, well, it should say union. Some things are so obvious that you can do a conjecture. But this is Beza's emendation. It's not a conjectural emendation. It is based on Beza's manuscripts, on the ancient manuscript that he had, and that's the testimony of pretty much everyone in the lifetime of Beza, and in who wrote after Beza, like for the next 100 years, sort of thing, on this issue. So when we see it says an article on conjectural emendation, basically it's saying that Beza just sort of made it up. But they're sort of saying, well, he did use like a manuscript, but he tricked himself that he had a manuscript. He didn't really have one. So that's sort of like the official story coming out of Munster at the moment. So Dr. Jan Krans, so this is TurretinFan's writing. And I appreciate, I just want to say, I'm pretty sure TurretinFan will probably go through this video. And I appreciate him going to all this hard work to do this. It saves me doing it, because beforehand I was doing lots of this sort of stuff. And sometimes too, I'd read through a bunch of material like I just did, and I'm not copying and pasting it into my website. I'm like, I'll do that later. And sometimes I don't. And so I appreciate that this is somewhere so that we can look at it, and also that it's been translated from the German. Dr. Jan Krans, who has provided the definitive treatment of conjectural emendation by Erasmus and Beza, so that's his formal work beyond what is written, provided an article on conjectural emendation as it relates to revelation in the Edito Critical Major of Revelation. So that's the 6th volume, 3.1 pages, 419 and 420. So I'm pretty sure that's where TurretinFan gets this from, but it's also on that website that I was showing you, when it has actually, I think I shut it down. Did I shut it down? No. Here. Well, anyway, in this article, Dr. Krans addresses Beza and Revelation 16:5. The following is my own English translation of Krans' German original. The translation has not been approved in any way by Dr. Krans, and I have omitted the 2 footnotes for this section of the text. Okay, so this is Krans translated. Okay, so Matt Singleton is in the house. A 20th century collection is not equivalent to a 16th century scholarship closer to the scene. Yeah, people are sort of like, well, we don't have stuff today and all the rest of it. Well, Beza clearly said he did, and he convinced everyone in that generation. So I think that holds a bit of weight, But anyway, a fairly famous case that I did not mention in my 2006 doctoral thesis is Revelation 16:5. Here, in his 3rd edition, 1582, Beza replaced hoosios with hoisomenos. Even in his Greek text and in his translation, not just in his annotations. So sometimes when dealing with the book beyond what is written, a lot of the changes are actually just in the notes. They're not actually in the text. Okay, so just so you know that. At the time, I thought that the reading, listen to this. At the time, I thought that the reading of hoisomenos was not a conjecture. Okay, so he formally thought that it wasn't a conjecture because he came to the same conclusions that myself, Jeff Riddle, Jeffrey Koo, Larry Brigden, and many others have now, that he had a manuscript. Okay, so at the time, I thought the reading of hoisomenos was not a conjecture because Beza himself said that he knew of an old manuscript with this reading. And so that actually goes completely against James White's material, because James White is like, oh, it's a conjectural emendation, not that it came from a manuscript. See, I don't know. I don't know if Jan Krans wrote about this anywhere and said, I think that he got it from a manuscript. I think he's saying that now. But, my trust levels with Jan Krans are pretty low. But, okay, let's give him the benefit of the doubt that he did that. Now, in about 2013, I came to the same conclusion, that Beza had an ancient manuscript. But after I was constantly going through material against Revelation 16:5, like James White and all the rest of it. And I sort of convinced myself out of that position. And I thought, well, he did just sort of make it up. That's what I thought. And I'm like, well, okay, where's this coming from? And I'm studying it. And then I went down the whole road of Nomina Sacra, and I was like, wow, that really clears everything up. But then it was like in 2019, Jeff Riddle and Larry Brigden and a few other guys had retranslated the Latin, and also Jan Krans did as well, and also a guy from the Smithsonian who Stephen Boyce knew, apparently. And I went through his one as well, and it was like, all these guys are saying he had an ancient manuscript. And then so I realized that it was correct. I was reading it correctly. But also with the whole concept of the Nomina Sacra on top of it, it was like, man, not only had I convinced myself that every reading points to the Isomenos reading, just like Matthew 1:1 with having Jesus in a Nomina Sacra form in the vast majority of manuscripts. I'm not sure, it might be every manuscript actually before printing. I would have to check that though. In the ones I've got on my website anyway, which is probably maybe 20 manuscripts there, old ones and Byzantine ones, but it's got the Nomina Sacra form. And so if this is just like that, it's a Nomina Sacra form, well, it's the expansion of the name of Jehovah. It just makes perfect sense, So anyway, so that's interesting that he said this. So he's saying, I formerly believed, just like Nick Sayers, Jeff Riddle, Larry Brigden, and others. Very interesting. Because people have pulled me over the coals for this type of belief, this type of understanding that Beza had an ancient manuscript. Jan Krans was like, yeah, I read it and came to the same conclusion. Interesting. But now I know that in all probability, such a manuscript does not exist. How does he know this? So even his whole concept of Revelation chapter 22 relies on Franz Delitzsch finding this manuscript with a page torn out. Okay. And then they're like, oh, Erasmus said he only did a tiny little bit of editing, back translating from the Latin, or maybe, 2 or 3 words. He said it was one line. It was very few, he says. But then Franz Delitzsch comes along with this manuscript and says, this is the one that Erasmus used. He back translated 135 words. And it's like, oh, what? And then it's like, oh, Erasmus must be a liar. He's an idiot, and it just gets to the point where you can't trust anything Erasmus says ever again. And, Textus Receptus is bad. They're just back translating from the Latin everywhere. That's where clearly Erasmus said it was one line. And he said it was because of homoioteliaton, which is clearly only just going to happen with a line or two. It's not going to happen with 136 or 135 words. I say 135 because of I just read an article with that number, but I count 136. So I'm going to stick with that number. But so apparently, Erasmus, just 136 words were back translated from the Latin. How on earth, that this can be established, and when they've found this manuscript, the point that I'm getting to is they claim that Franz Delitzsch sort of found this manuscript, and it went missing from the time of Erasmus to the time of Franz Delitzsch, which is 300 years or something like that, more 350 years maybe. And so so that can happen. How come a manuscript that Beza had can't go missing? You know what I mean? They just, 1 minute their whole story is based on a manuscript going missing and refound. The next thing, Beza's like, I've got a manuscript and it's got this reading. And they're like, well, we don't have it today. Prove it. And it's like, well, he said that he had it. No, not good enough. And so then they just go on to make stories. So they can only deal with extant manuscripts. And like I keep saying, Dan Wallace, who is a guru in their field, said that in World War II alone, 1 million biblical documents were destroyed. Manuscripts, things with, I guess icons with scriptures on them, whatever. 1 million documents were destroyed. So let alone World War One, let alone the Napoleonic Wars, let alone floods and fires and, Constantinople, fall of Constantinople, the sack of Rome, 1527, tons of manuscripts destroyed, burnt, lost, stolen. But he knows. But now I know that in all probability, it's just so strong, such a manuscript does not exist and never has existed. My mind just goes, surely you can see with me, this is just Bart Ehrman. See, this is the thing. I don't want to demonize young Krans for writing in 2006 his doctrinal thesis, and Bart Ehrman's the editor. Okay. But at the end of the day, he many times says things like this, and it sounds just like when I'm listening to the book Forged or misquoting Jesus, or the appeal back to Codex Beza in the 5th century document that apparently Jesus got angry and healed someone, and just this type of thing. It's just this outlandish sort of claims where you're left there just confused, going, okay, well, that's, but in all probability, this manuscript does not exist and never has existed. So let's hear his explanation here. As we will see, it is quite possible that Beza deceived himself. I'm going to try not to laugh. I want to keep this serious, but it's like, my gosh, He deceived himself as well as everyone else. He tricked himself. He not only just deceived everyone, he was like his own worst enemy. He was walking around like Joe Biden, licking fingers, ice cream moments, just standing there staring off into the sunset. That's Theodore Beza. Let us first take a closer look at Beza's remarks. Okay, so he mentions this, and he will be Kaiho esomenos. Usually Kaiho osios is read, but the article is contrary to. So this is Theodore Beza through Krans and through Turretin translating from German. But the article is contrary to all the rules of language and shows that the reading is corrupt. The Vulgate, whether it reads the article or not, has by no means a more correct sanctus, holy osios, whereby the particle K is wrongly omitted. Although it is necessary to connect the chaos and osios, but as we said above on Revelation 1:4, John was accustomed to add a third element in all other places where he extended the name of Jehovah. And notice that's extending the name of Jehovah, namely Hoekomenos. Why then would he have omitted this in this place? Therefore, I cannot doubt that the original reading is the one which I have restored on the basis of an ancient and reliable manuscript, namely Hoekomenos. Here is not Hoekomenos as in the four places above, 1:4, 1:8, 4:8, and 11:17, probably for the reason that there is Christ as coming judge, while in the vision, while in this vision is presented as already sitting on the judge's seat and delivering legal orders. Beza, so back to Krans, so that was Krans, but basically quoting Beza's annotation. Beza here represents several arguments to change the reading. It is clear, however, that this is different from earlier passages such as Revelation 1:4. The reason for his conjecture is thus given. The author of the Apocalypse seems to be inconsistent, because otherwise the expression ho'un kai ho'en is always ended by ho'ekomenos. This pattern is restored by Beza and at the same time changed for the sake of context. For his conjecture here has esomenos instead of ekomenos, because Christ in the previous passages 1:4, 8, 4:8, and 11:17 was the coming judge, but now already sits on the judgment seat. But what about the old and reliable manuscript to which Beza refers? Okay, here we go. I do not claim to have solved this riddle. Okay, so he's doubting it, but he said in all probability. And he's making up so he's telling us that he's making up a story. So this is, listen to this. But I will make a suggestion for a possible sequence of events. It is fortunate that the hand copy of his second edition from 1565, which Beza used during the preparation of the third edition in his 1582, has survived. There are only a few entries in the Apocalypse, but here in Revelation 16:5, Beza has underlined ho'osios and written in the margin ho'esomenos, that is his conjecture, but nothing more. Okay, so he's claiming, now this is, I'll show you, remember we looked at it earlier, this one here where it has osios, and he's written ho'esomenos in the margin here. Okay, so he's saying it's a conjecture and nothing more. He's just made it up. So he's saying it's a conjecture, came from nothing. It just came from his mind, A similar entry can be found in Revelation 1:4, where he is underlined to, and noted in the margin in vetusto codice legatur Theo. So in an old manuscript, it says Theo, which means God. Okay. The difference is that here it is already explicitly a manuscript was mentioned. Although Beza, in characteristic fashion, does not care which manuscript is meant. So notice they're saying, oh, it's his characteristic to just sort of make up, I don't care which manuscript I'm looking at, whatever, that's the type of story that I'm like, okay, well, you've got to prove this. And so that's where, if you read beyond what he's written, that he talks about that, which I don't think is the reality. What I now suspect, also a kind of conjecture, is the following. Okay, so this is the story. In Revelation 16:5, Beza added Somenos early on. Okay, so not from a manuscript. Notice, he did it not from, even though he said that he got it from a manuscript, he didn't. Okay, perhaps not even as a conjecture. So he didn't even make it up, like go, oh, okay, well, I'm going to work this out and make it up. But as the reading he would have expected, according to the pattern described above. So he's just put like a Komenos there and just gone, well, I think it should read a Somenos. And, that's where he's ended up. Then later, let's say when he's preparing the third edition of the printing, that is around 1582, he simply forgot where this Somenos came from. He forgot. Joe Biden just, sniffing. He was busy sniffing some hair and licking ice cream, and he's just like got an ice cream headache. And Beza got chased by a bear and a wolf down the Swiss Alps, and he's rolling, he had a dream and within a dream, and, he forgot where this Somenos came from. And following the example of Revelation 1:4, assumed that it was the same old and, now because he liked the reading, reliable manuscript. So he didn't lie. He's got dementia. He's a patient. They didn't have sort of, any help back in those days. This guy was like, a powerful guy, took over from Stephanus in his Textus Receptus editions, Henry Stephanus helping him. And he took over from Calvin, he's right up there. He's, basically changed France forever. But, he's just got this one problem. He can't remember anything. He's like, oh, I don't know, there's a manuscript here and there. And he's just scratching his head. He's eating his ice cream. He's, sniffing someone's hair. He forgot. He simply forgot where this Somenos reading came from, and following the example of Revelation 1:4, assumed that it was the same old, now because he liked the reading, reliable manuscript. This alone can explain why Beza referred to a manuscript that in all probability never existed. Can you see how, they're just making this up? Can you see why I'm just like, this is rubbish. This is just ridiculous. I'm all for people making up a conjecture when they can't find the answer to something. Okay, if you're wondering how, you're studying history and you wonder how that boat got from there to there, or it's like, well, perhaps there was a storm and they got caught in it and they never really wrote much about it, but they ended up getting there quickly. And you have to sometimes just fill in the gaps, and that's, history's filled with that. Even just studying World War II history, you're like, well, what did Hitler think on this day? And it's like, I don't know, he's probably high on amphetamines or something, and he's come up with this idea. Let's just have Operation Barbarossa and we'll go to Russia, and we'll he's just coming up with his ideas. But then it's like, okay, now the facts say that he always wanted to invade Russia and he always wanted that land to be for the Germans, and so you got to look at the facts and stats, but you're always trying to piece things together. So look, kudos to young Krans for coming up with a creative story, but that's all it is. And we've got to admit that this is not fact. This is not, just because he's in the academy doesn't mean he's part of the magisterium where whatever he says is, it becomes doctrine. So he's saying this alone can explain why Beza referred to a manuscript that in all probability never existed. So he's just saying this manuscript just doesn't exist at all. Had Beza known that Homosomenos was actually nothing more than his own guess or exegetical remark, he would have probably never included the reading in the text. So that what they're trying to do is soften it. It's like, how can we, because we're going to get a lot of flack from Textus Receptus guys, especially that pesky Sayers guy who wants to deal with all the facts and read all the stuff and make videos that go for 10 hours and upset Mark Ward about how long they go for. He's going to talk about it and he's going to bring it up. So let's not say that Beza's a bad guy and he's just, like a Erasmus type of liar who just lies, and says, oh, there's only a few words when there's 136 words missing and all this sort of stuff. Let's not make out that he's like an Erasmus. Let's make out Beza, because he's a Protestant guy. We're going to be careful. He's well respected by the King James guys, contemporary with a lot of the King James translators. New Piscator, new Iunius, new Tremellius, legendary scholar of his day and age. We can't just throw him under the bus like we have with Erasmus. So let's just say that he just forgot. That's our story. Let's say that his intentions were always good, just like Joe Biden. He intended to go out that door, but he turned around and after an ice cream headache, and he saw some hair and had to sniff it on the way out the door, and this is what happened. So let's continue. There is a certain irony to the whole story. So you got to get the James White, what did he call them? The Align brothers. The Align brothers. Who's that? There's so many errors just in that itself. It's like the Aldine press, which could have been 50 guys. It was one of the biggest printing presses in Europe at the time. But it's the Aldine brothers, getting them mixed up with the Elzevers, and they were uncle and nephew. They weren't brothers. And so it's just all these errors compounded. The Align brothers, they used Erasmus's text. Then Erasmus tricked himself and didn't realize that they had used his text, and he got their reading. And look at how ironic is this story? And he brings it up in debates and stuff like that. And people who know this stuff, like myself, and people from the confessional bibliology, guys, Jeff Riddle and Christopher Yetzer and Bryan Ross, and people who study this stuff and look at it and think about these sort of things. We're just there like puking in our mouths and swallowing it. We're just like, oh my gosh, this is so bad. That James White would say this sort of thing. But he gets this sort of thing from Jan Krans. Jan Krans lays the seeds, and James White, it germinates, and James White just says it, and it all comes out sideways. But he'll just keep repeating it. Even if you correct him, he'll just say, well, Stephen Anderson and, Ruckman, you just point out to some weirdo here and there, and someone who whips his wife and say, you're like that, It's like, do you realize that's called ad hominem argumentation? Why are you doing that to us? Oh, because you're obsessed with bullying people, pigeonholing people, and calling us names, instead of looking at the argumentation that we're making. There's a certain irony to the whole story. Be that as it may, one can see here again the co-expectation of heresy and its devastating effect. The case is well known because it plays a role in the ongoing discussion on the internet about the King James Version and the Textus Receptus, comparable to that about Erasmus and the conclusion of the Apocalypse. Yeah, it's pretty much about as fanciful as the whole concept of Bengel and Tregellus predicting that the last 6 verses were back translated from Latin, and then finding a manuscript with that page torn out and the last 6 verses are missing, and going, see, we knew all along that Erasmus was just a liar. It's like, when you sort of like go out and you're like, I predict that we're going to find 3 gold coins, and that day you find 3 gold coins. It's sort of like, I think there's more to the story than this, and I would much rather believe Erasmus than believe what Franz Delitzsch said. I mean, just look into Franz Delitzsch and the forged Hebrew documents of that day. And so, but that's another story. It says, and I remember this website, "Oh, Beezer, why did you do that?" So this is like the Textus Receptus, or the Received Text Bible Society or something. I don't think they're around anymore, but they had their own Textus Receptus edition without these type of readings. I think they went with like a Stephanus or whatever, but they would be King James only, according to James White's 5 King James onlyist categories. Even though they probably didn't like the King James, the Textus Receptus only, and you're a King James only, So, "Oh, Beezer, why did you do that?" asked one person. A question to which, in my opinion, there is only one answer, so that future generations can be left with a clear, all too clear example of the historical contingency of the Textus Receptus. Here we go, the Textus Receptus. Erasmus fails because, we've got all these stories about him rushing to print and promising things. And even though Codex, the British Codex doesn't match up with Codex Montfortianus, we'll just say that they're the same document. Just make up all this stuff about, Revelation 22, 1 John 5:7, and of course, Revelation 16:5 with Beezer. It's all just Textus Receptus, the Three Stooges. Erasmus, Stephanus, and Beezer are the Three Stooges, just slapping each other on the head instead of being revered as legendary scholars. Even the world reveres Erasmus and says, what an amazing guy. Even the world reveres Theodore Beezer and King James translators and others. It's only these scholars who think they're a bunch of bozos and clowns and slipping on banana peels and making all these silly mistakes and tricking themselves and deceiving everyone in the process. And it's like, but when you're rabidly anti-Textus Receptus, this is the type of conclusion that you come up with. And these guys are like, oh, they'll just defend the TR no matter what. Like James White will say that, they just defend the TR. That's their default position. Just defend the TR, defend the TR, defend the TR. These guys are just against the TR. What more can I say? I mean, when you get your Hebrew scholars on my channel saying, 12th century rabbi mentions Revelation 16:5 as the Tetragrammaton, as the explanation that comes from Aya Asher Aya, I am that I am. I mean, how much further do I have to go? You know what I mean? But they don't want to deal with it. He's not even dealing with this. Even TurretinFan has dealt with this, in the best way that he can do it. And I'm like, okay, well, I'm glad that you've done it. I don't agree with your conclusion, but at least he's done it. Like Jan Krans isn't even talking about this. And even when we read through what's been mentioned by the people he's put on his own website in Munster, they're talking about it with the Tetragrammaton and it's the name of Jehovah and things like that. They're talking about that, but he's not dealing with that, is he? Let's just not talk about that. Because if you start talking about that, you start realizing that the name of Jehovah is probably very important to a lot of people. It has been in many other instances in manuscript writing. And so this whole concept, it's like, drum roll, let's see what the answer is. And Jan Krans is like, Beezer tricked everyone and tricked himself. And it's like, what a letdown. I was expecting more than this, but anyway. So TurretinFan says, I tend to agree with Dr. Krans' analysis. Well, I would say that I disagree, but, I agree to disagree. Turretin. The reading Theo is a variant found in Stephanus's margin. Well, that's in Revelation 1:4. Okay. So that's fine. I would just say that is probably a misreading of, it says apo 2. And so I think someone just thought that was Theo. and maybe in a nominal form with a squiggle on top there, but it's not Theo, it's 2. So it's a variant found in Stephanus's margin. So apparently one of the manuscripts that TurretinFan mentions has it there. Okay, so that's fine, but it's like we're looking at Revelation 1:4 here, not Revelation 16:5. But let's continue. We have good reason to believe that Beza had access to Stephanus's textual apparatus as it appears in the 1550 edition. Okay, yes, I would believe that too. It is also believed that Beza may have access to a more detailed unpublished apparatus prepared by Henry Stephanus. And as I mentioned in the annotations, sorry, the conjectures, I'll just go back to 16.5 here. Let's have a quick look at that again. Oops, that's a chat. That'd be interesting to go into, actually. So yeah, here we see, which one was it? It was the Pro one here, where it says where Stephanus had collations of twice as many manuscripts as actually mentioned. And then it says, more generally, Hushi follows Wettstein's mistaken idea that Beza derived the reading from Stephanus's collation book. So Jan Krans doesn't agree with TurretinFan on that one. So that I'm just saying that for TurretinFan, that it's good to know where you stand with Jan Krans on that. Stephanus identifies the manuscript in question as 15 iota epsilon, namely G8 GA82, a 10th century minuscule. So this here is the text of Stephanus. Let's grab that. Let's see where I'm at. Okay, that's where the other page went. Now, that one there. Revelation 16:5 page. We don't need that. Matthew 1:1. I can shut that down. Yes, here we are. So we've got the 1550. So that's the exact picture. So here we have Apo Theo Ho. So Apo. So it does look like a Theo, doesn't it? Because see, this ligature is basically a upsilon and an omicron on top of each other. So that's why it looks like a Theo. It could look like a nomina sacra. So and it's interesting here in the margin, Exodus chapter 3, and it's talking about that. The ho'on, sorry, ho'un, kaho'en, kaho'ekomenos, and then from the seven spirits, etc., and from Jesus Christ, the faithful witness. So clearly that is that one there. So that's Stephanus' 1550. He's talking about this marginal reading. So that's what Krans was saying, that, I'll just quickly go to it. Okay. Here, he says, there are only a few entries in the Apocalypse, but here in Revelation 16:5, Beza has underlined ho'ozios and written in the margin ho'somenos, i.e. his conjecture, but nothing more. A similar entry can be found in Revelation 1:4, where he has underlined to and noted in the margin in vetuesto codice ligature Okay, so the ligature, I guess that's, they mistakenly thought that it was a ligature, but they thought that it read Theo. Or in an old manuscript it says Theo. Okay, that makes more sense. The difference is that here it is already explicitly a manuscript was mentioned, although Beza in characteristic fashion does not care which manuscript is meant. But so it's mentioned here, but clearly this is mentioned because that's the style of Stephanus, where Beza is going through and looking at many other things and making emendations where he sees fit. Perhaps we should go to Theodore Beza's. Let's check out. He's 1598, and we'll look at his annotations at Revelation 1:4. Now, I'm pretty sure TurretinFan's actually done that, so maybe I could errara. No, that's the wrong one. Maybe TurretinFan, Revelation 1:4. Okay. Make this one smaller. Okay, it's Piscator, Revelation 16:5. Okay, I'll go 1:4. So Erasmus's annotations. Okay. So I guess that's the thing. You've already got Erasmus. You've got other people. You've even got Piscator. You've got Stephanus. And so why reinvent the wheel? Perhaps it was just common knowledge. And so he's like, well, people will know what I'm talking about, or why not just give the benefit of the doubt? But so that's, I'm not sure if these get translated or they just put there, but that's fine. Okay, so it's got a footnote here, Revelation 4:1. Okay, so I can't remember. I do recall that TurretinFan had done Revelation 4:1. So maybe I can just type that in. Yeah, maybe I'll just go here, copy that. Revelation 4:1. Maybe this one. Okay, I'll look for 4:1. 4. Sorry, I'm looking for 1:4. No wonder I'm not getting any hits. That is ridiculous. Getting late here. It's 12:15. I've got to go soon. Maybe I've got it on my website. Beza. It's just going to come up everywhere. Okay, B's are 1, 4. Okay, yes, the following is a translation of the Latin from the above from TurretinFan's blog spot. So thankfully, I've got it there. From one who is, but no one be surprised, the construction is irregular. It does not answer. It must be understood the apostle which wished to express what is written in Exodus 3:14, exactly what I've been saying, where the Lord is speaking to Moses, ask for his name. He says to the Israelites, Eshia Shelakani Alachem. Okay, interesting. That is, I am, I was, and I will be. There you go, Revelation 65 right there. Is, was, will be, has sent me to you, for the most learned Hebrews report, and indeed the Talmudists themselves, that the word he encompasses 3 times present, past, future. Okay, so what are we actually looking for here? Let's not get too sidetracked. All right, I've found that. Now, what were we actually looking for? The Theo reading. Okay. Let's see if he mentions that. That's the only real reason. So I'll... Okay, so it says here, if he had written toe. Okay, so he's got the toe there. He's not mentioning a Theo, or maybe it could be written as God or translated. Anyway, I can't see that he mentions that issue there. But definitely he's got like a lot to say. Okay, so let's get back to this. So then we've got GA 28, and I've got that ready for us here to look at. So this is on the CSNTM website. So let's enlarge that. Oops, it's going backwards. Let's get out of there and we'll go there. Okay, so that is the Makarioi there. Yohanan. Okay, so it should be around here. And we can see the Nomina Sacra, Jesu Christu, here, and from Jesus Christ. And so it will be above that. It's pretty hard to read. Maybe what I can do is print screen. I'll just try this. Full screen. If I go to paint, INT, paste that in. Okay, we'll drag that along with us. I'll show you what I'm doing. So sometimes what I do, I get paint, and yeah, actually I want to keep that bit. So yeah, what I do is I drag, drag the whole thing, select all. It's a bit clunky. You can do this in Adobe Illustrator. Okay, and that's about where we want it. It's interesting, it's got a commentary down here. Okay, so let's just go back, get rid of the rest of this. And view, edit. Where's invert? Image. Okay, let's select all. Image. They've changed it so many times over the years. I haven't used this for so long. I might have to just go select all, and we'll go to Adobe Illustrator. Copy that. Adobe. Okay, so we've got a few people jumping in. Matt Singleton says, also, wouldn't the other TR editions in agreement show evidence added to the testimony? Yeah, this is distinctly in Beza's, but it's also in Elsevier's, which is quite interesting. Avery F says, only if you actually believe that God preserved his words, Matt. But yes, it would. Matthew Singleton says, I do believe in preservation and that theology has more proper authority over the conversation than textual criticism. Okay, so let's open that up over there. Why would a critic even waste their time on the conversation unless they were wanting to discuss theology? It is a theological topic, and so theology, not criticism, is a category. In all probability, is a faith statement, which shows the irony that criticism is a reverse statement of faith. So TurretinFan is in the house tuning in. Hey, TurretinFan. I thought you'd be interested in this. Yeah, whose handwriting is that? Not mine. LOL. Yeah. It's just like a Joe Biden. That's pretty much just like Joe Biden. Yeah, I didn't write that. I think I wrote that and I meant it, you know. A master deception, 16.5, into tricking hardly anybody into believing a more consistent reading, which does not change the meaning of the text. So that was Matt Singleton. Helg says, in all probability, Beza had a JB moment, Joe Biden moment. Yeah. For instance, Beza was Calvin's number 2 and one of the top theologians of Reformed Christianity, aside from his textual scholarship. Yes. Okay, so I've just jumped onto my Adobe Illustrator, only just because Paint was just so awkward and I couldn't find the invert. I'm pretty sure there's an invert. Yeah, invert colors. This is really helpful if you're doing manuscript searching. So obviously it's a screenshot, so you can't copy from the CSNTM website, but this actually can help you just to read it, you know, because okay, so we have apo ho, and that looks like theo there, doesn't it? Because it looks like a theta and an upsilon with a nomenclature on it, and then it has ho on, kai ho en, kai ho ho menos is there. And so, yeah, it does look like that there is from this manuscript. So, yeah, kudos to TurretinFan for grabbing that and showing that on. I'll just drop that one down. Don't save that. For showing it on his page right here. There. So I just went to the source, looked it up, and it was there too. So, but this is the commentary on the side. So sometimes that can have some interesting things. So there's Christu there. But I don't want to bore you guys and just go through that. So that's for me for another time. GA82 differs slightly from the text of Beza pre 1582 in terms of having ho'on, kai os, a osios. So ho'on, kai ho. I think it's kai ho. Well, definitely kai ho osios is there. I think it's a little bit of an error there, so hopefully this will help during. I know he's only just brought it out like a bit of a sort of rush thing, and translated it, which is fantastic. But yeah, here we have the Bibles online is fantastic. It's great. So I don't think it's really an issue. Oops. I don't know why it did that. Okay, let's zoom in. Okay, I'm just going to have to, or maybe I can go side by side. No, won't let me. So there's the reading there. It's ho'on, kai ho'en, kai ho'erkomenos. Okay, so we're looking at Revelation 16:5 with that one. So let's go there. Yeah, it's going to be fun trying to do that. All right, we'll try. And Stephanus's is the hardest because it you've got to recognize the numbers in Greek. Yeah, it's too far. Okay. Maybe I can just see it from. Yeah. Nope, it's not helping me. That's fine. We'll just do it from this one. Okay, that zooms in pretty good anyway. Oops. So we have ho'on, kai ho'en, kai ho'osios. Okay, so it's exactly the same except for esomenos and osios. So it's exactly the same, where I think it says ho'on, and then it doesn't say. Oh yeah, I think it says os there by mistake. So kai ho'en, and then kai ho'osios. So yeah, it definitely has that written. So you have the ho'on, kai ho'en, kai ho'osios. So I don't think it differs slightly. It's only just the esomenos reading that is different there. So we'll keep reading through this. I'll just make it bigger. Stephanus's margin does note a variant at Revelation 16:5 and points to the same manuscript, 15 iota epsilon, namely GA 82. In this case, though, I believe Stephanus intended to direct the reader to the fact that GA 82 does not insert Lord into the text. Yeah, and so this one here, where it has the Kyrie with the little marking there, that's the exact marking there. So that does point to Lord. Of course, it is possible that Henry Stephanus's more complete apparatus, assuming this fact existed and that Beza had it, may have mentioned the absence of the K before Osios. It doesn't actually. So that there is a ligature with the K. If you want to know some of the printed ligatures, I'd just recommend you go to my site, Textus Receptus, tr.org.au will get you there. Go to books, and then down the bottom it has ligatures of early printed Greek. So this book is very helpful. Oftentimes, even when you go through manuscripts, because a lot of the print is just from manuscripts. So if we look up a K here, there should be a ton of them. Oh, whoops, I went too far. Went right to the end. You can see some pretty fancy stuff here. Here. So the K here, so you can see that one there is the one that is used there. So exactly the same. Even the symbols are the same. So sometimes you see it like this and you're like, what's that? But it is in there. You see that there? That's that. That's a K. So it looks like a C with a jacket on. You know, it's so weird. But it's very helpful if you're reading through that source material, the early printed stuff. But even with manuscripts, sometimes where people have variants and stuff like that, if you've got something that looks like this, it can look like an Ek, but it's not. It's an X. Things like this can throw you off. But then when you discover it and you're like, see that N, you've noticed that one, the N there is this one here. So it's Ho-un, Kai-ho-en, and it's definitely that, isn't it? Which is interesting. But yeah, this is a ligatures of early printed Greek. So yeah, very, very good book. So I recommend you can download that. It's a PDF on there as well. Or maybe you're talking about the Kai-ho before the Ozios in GA 82. Anyway, so I'll read it again. Of course, it is possible that Henry Stephanus' more complete apparatus, assuming, so I guess that would not be Henry, that would be Robert Stephanus's more complete. Oh yeah, talking about the apparatus. Yeah, assuming this in fact existed and Beza. Oh yeah, so the apparatus, the collation of other manuscripts and things like that. Yeah, that Jan Krans doesn't seem to think Beza used. May have mentioned the absence of the Kai-ho before Ozios. These are details that Beza's explanation aims to address, at least in part. Okay. So I'm not really sure. I'm a little bit confused about that, but we'll move on. That leaves the question of whether possibly Henry Stephanus himself, in a more complete apparatus, suggested the conjectural emendation adopted by Beza. We must admit, however, that this is simply speculation, as the more complete apparatus, if it existed, seems to have been lost to time. Based on my reading of Dr. Krans' thesis, I believe it would be accurate to say that Beza generally only identified the two codices in his possession, Codex Claromontanus and Codex Beza Cantabrigensis. Neither of these manuscripts include Revelation. I don't think Dr. Krans' take is too harsh, namely that Beza did not particularly care which manuscript had given a reading. So it makes sense that his handwritten notes mention a manuscript, but not which manuscript. The note referenced by Dr. Krans at Revelation 1:4 is reproduced below. Okay, so this is in the handwritten document here. So it's got, the reading of Theo there. And so it said that ligature one that I thought meant a ligature, but it means a manuscript. So whether Beza was tripped up by the excessive brevity of his note at Revelation 16:5, reproduced below, the Ozios substituted with hot esomenos, or whether Beza misread the notes of Henry Stephanus, we may never know. So it was interesting to note that Dr. Krans had not included Revelation 16:5 in his thesis because Beza asserted that he based his change on a manuscript. What seems inescapable, however, is that Beza seems to have been wrong in that claim, as we have no reason to think Beza a liar. We must conclude that he came to this error honestly. So that's what I was saying about, like, you know, it's either way, you're calling him a liar, or you're saying he's like Joe Biden and he's tricking himself with his note. And the thing is, it's like, I just don't think that, like, I know Krans has written a book on notes and things like that, and, you know, Beza, you know, conjectural imitations and all the rest of it. But it's like, I just don't think that these, like, I've seen, you know, let me just show you that this is why. Okay. Last 6 verses of Revelation. Okay, so if I go down to the Olam reading, okay. Now look at Jan Krans. So Jan Krans, this is why I don't trust what he's saying. Okay, let me go back to there. Jan Krans says, he's talking about this whole thing, and he says, so this is him translating Erasmus's material from the Latin. The style of this book is very simple, and its contents are mostly narrative, let alone the fact that its author has long since been unknown. So he's got Erasmus saying that he didn't believe that John wrote this. So Erika Rummel, she did her translation from the Latin, like in the 1980s. And look at what she says. The language of this book is very simple, and the content has mostly a historical sense. Not to mention the authorship was once uncertain. In other words, like the Greeks were uncertain of it. Not Erasmus, that, you know, he's saying, oh, we don't know who wrote it. So it's a completely different translation. So when we look at here, he says, here in his book in Krans's book Erasmus and the text of Revelation 22:19, he writes the footnote. So I don't think it's in a book. I think it's in an article. But anyways, maybe it's in a book somewhere. But he has translation Erika Rummel. So it says, at the end of Revelation, I added some words to the Greek book on the basis of our Latin ones. Translation Erika Rummel. Instead of authorship was once uncertain, I would prefer with another nuance of Olam. The authorship has long since been uncertain. So he's changing the whole meaning here. So it's like, okay, let's look at what Olam means. So he admits he changed the entire reading from Rummel by redefining Olam. In the Lewis Charlton T, an elementary Latin dictionary, New York, Cincinnati, and Chicago, American Book Company, 1890, it says Olam. And then it says, at that time. Now, what did he write? He wrote, the authorship has long since been uncertain. Okay, so the authorship of the Book of Revelation, Erasmus didn't know what it was. But Erika Rummel says the authorship was once uncertain. Okay, so which one matches Olam? At that time, some time ago, once upon a time, once, formerly, of old, and that's it. Matching Erika Rummel. So he has translated Olam the way he wants. He's admitting that he's changed it. He wants this other nuance of Olam but it doesn't exist. And he's reading into the text. It says, once and again, now and then, at times, customarily, frequently. And so, he's talking about other aspects. But clearly he has translated it against Erica Rummel. Its author has long since been unknown, saying that Erasmus didn't think that the Book of Revelation was written by John, compared to the authorship was once uncertain. Talking about the Greeks, they didn't trust the Book of Revelation. They had rejected it. And so, that's just one thing that I can point out with Jan Krans. And I'm like, well, that's just wrong. You shouldn't just be changing these things. And so to come up with a conclusion like this, to me, it's just anything but what Erasmus said. What Beza said. Beza said he had an ancient manuscript. It was believed by the vast majority of people. Krans apparently used to believe that. But now it's like he's moved on and come up with all these stories to fix that problem. And this is not a fix. It's getting messier in my eyes, because it just makes Beza out to be a Joe Biden. So anyway, it's nearly 1 o'clock in the morning here. I've gone for 3 hours. So I should really control myself and go and get some sleep before I start murmuring and muttering and turn into a pumpkin. So let's shut that down. All right, so I'll play my fancy little outro. So hopefully, I'm not sure if TurretinFan's still watching, but hopefully you can, watch from the beginning. I'm sure I give this a fair go. I read through what Krans has said on his site, and I really appreciate you going forward and translating that document from German into English. So anyway, guys, I'm going to leave it there. God bless you. I'll play my fancy outro, and hopefully I'll see you again soon.